Hello there.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello,
Hiya.
hello. How are we?
Good. How are you
Good.
guys?
Good. It's been a while.
Yeah.
It has. And
Me
we've
and
come
the-
together for a special occasion.
Special delivery for 90 days of DevOps for Michael
Yeah.
Cade.
Somewhere up there. Yeah. Don't other way, Carl. Yeah, that way. Up by Wesley's head.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
What's up?
Just
No,
I've no
yeah,
idea
that,
Mirror,
that,
this
way.
is so annoying. All right, yeah,
Yeah.
we got it. All right, yeah,
That
90 days of DevOps, and we're going to give a short talk about GitOps, but we've not seen each other as a group for quite some time. We're
Yeah.
Cloud Native Weekly for a lot of episodes, and we're picking it back up in February.
Yes.
Looking forward
Season
to it.
2.
Season 2.
Yeah.
We should
Season-
label
look at
that Season
Look at us
2.
go. Season 2,
Mhm.
episode 1.
S2E01. That we should label it like that.
Yep. Get it on LimeWire. It's all coming back.
LimeWire. Oh,
Sorry.
LimeWire
That's
is doing.
showing your age,
Ah.
Cooper.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
They're
well,
tweeting again or posting on X again. They're coming back as AI
Yeah.
something or another.
AI something. That was something.
Yeah.
But LimeWire is back. But
Yes.
beyond the scope of this post, we're doing a video for 90 days of DevOps where there already have been a lot of nice contributions.
Mhm.
Yep.
And we're going to put in one as well. Michael, thanks for having us. And today we're going to have a little chat about GitOps.
Yes.
Awesome.
And I mean, GitOps is, well, you could say it, well, could you say it's a de facto standard? Could you? It should be, but
It should
It's
be.
the-
It's getting
Well,
there.
I mean, it's the. I say this regularly to customers, but it's the North Star for app deployment, right? So you can do
Mhm.
your manual deployment and your imperative or your kubectl apply or kubectl create or whatever. Then you're sort of migrating on to maybe pipeline deployments, but realistically, your pipelines are just doing that too. You know. So this is GitOps and Flux and Argo. That's the North Star, the pull versus push method.
Gotta pull it in, not push.
and I think you're okay. I think you're onto something.
You've got to be
there,
passionate
though.
about GitOps, man.
Come on.
We're
Cool
always passionate
technology.
about GitOps. We're always passionate. But I think, Carl, you said a number of very interesting things here because one of those being, yeah, you did. Maybe by accident, but you did. Like
Thanks.
push versus pull. And imperative versus declarative. That's a very interesting one. Because what I see, there's a lot of discussion or maybe misunderstanding about what GitOps really is. I see a lot of discussions where people talk, let's do GitOps, and we put it in a Git repository, and whether that's GitHub or GitLab or Azure DevOps or wherever you want to store it, doesn't matter. We put it in a repo and then we deploy it. That's not GitOps. The push versus pull is a very interesting one. It's about maintaining state and reconciliation. That's the interesting part here. It's
And-
not just pushing the code.
And some folks decide that GitOps is if you're using a Git repo, then it's GitOps.
Yes.
That's
It's
just
got the
because
word
it's
Git
running
in it.
Yeah, I mean, at the risk of upsetting a lot of people, that's in the same vein as just because it's in the cloud doesn't mean it's cloud native. So I mean, and that's why I can hear the pitchforks coming out. The torches getting lit, and that's why I like this. And I put the banner up there where you were talking, Wesley. That's why I like this open GitOps because that's that's a community initiative to help people understand what GitOps is supposed to be. They're saying it's like we've already talked about. It's the website says it's declarative, versioned, and immutable, which is what using a Git repo is for. It's for versioning and your code and making it immutable. It's pulled automatically, so your agents or your pods or whatever are pulling the stuff in as opposed to it being pushed in and it's continuously reconciled. So check out that link. I'll put it up again. and get involved in the community, because it's like I said already, it's a North Star of app deployment and cluster configuration, is how we want to do things. So yeah.
And I think it also fits well within. I mean, DevOps and GitOps. They're you can do GitOps within DevOps. DevOps is something broader, in my opinion. GitOps is a way of deploying things, maintaining state, versioning. It's got a lot of benefits. Ideally, you'd have GitOps and you have an IDP and you do platform engineering, and then everything comes together.
I was waiting for it. Where's the bingo? Platform engineering
Platform
stuff.
engineering. There we go. And just for call, if you do Kubernetes, you want to do Cilium. So now we mentioned everything.
Yes. Another bingo tick. Yeah.
No, but it's a lot of things coming together. But GitOps is not just storing stuff in Git. Let's just be clear about that. There's more to it.
And I'm just going to add to that as well. Like DevOps, like you said, it's that overarching thing, but it's a concept, a model. It's not a set of tools. Well, it's a set of tools, but the tools are the GitOps and the IDPs, and that equals DevOps as the overarching thing. So you can be a DevOps engineer, but you're just using a load of tools. DevOps isn't a tool; it's a collection of tools. Like platform engineering is a collection of tools.
Well, and if we want to go down that particular rabbit hole, DevOps isn't a collection of tools at all. It's a culture and a way of working, and
philosophy.
Yes.
A philosophy is the word I was looking for, Mr. Hackman. Thank you.
Yes, very good.
I'm not even English. Philosophy. All right. I think all three of us have been working on anything related to this for years. So maybe we're not SMEs, maybe we are, but we do have an opinion. And
yes, we have an opinion. I don't know that in this line of work, particularly with cloud native and Kubernetes, that you could ever be an SME specialist, perhaps
not anymore.
Expert. I would argue with you that that's not possible.
They died when the cloud came to fruition. The experts died. No longer can you be an Active Directory expert, or in Azure AD it changes too often. Yep, gone.
So without talking ourselves out of a job.
Yes.
So for today, we're not gonna. I mean, we can talk about this for probably 2 hours and then still not do a demo or get into the techie bit of things. But today we're gonna use Flux v2 as an add-on for Azure Kubernetes Services, and we're going to deploy some services the GitOps way. And I also want to talk about some other projects that are out there. Show a very interesting repo.
Nice.
Maybe we should just get to that and just discuss how this benefits all of us while we go along.
Sounds good.
And then one thing, I'm going to demo it, enabling the GitOps add-on Flux v2 through the Azure portal. But if we talk GitOps, friends don't let friends click in the Azure portal. So
we're ClickOps in the GitOps in.
I can't even repeat.
Hard to say that.
ClickOpsing the GitOpsing. Say that 10
Yes.
times very fast. I dare you.
We better not. We'll probably get cancelled.
All right. Look at that. Yeah, it's the Azure portal. I mean, come on, man. Never mind.
It makes for a better demo.
Friends don't let friends portal adventure unless we're doing for demos.
Yeah,
so it's okay.
Yeah,
it's a demo. It's acceptable.
Yep. Now,
but if we do port forwarding, then you do the same thing. Yeah, let's put the screen up.
There we go.
Okay, so we're not going to do any port forwarding today, so we don't see any other random pop-ups. So don't do this. Yeah. So we're gonna AKS makes GitOps easy, right? It provides an add-on even through the Azure portal. I mean, it's got, let me scroll down over here. It's even called GitOps.
Yeah.
And we can just click it and we can then deploy a GitOps configuration, which means we're going to point it at a repository where our YAML files, Helm charts, customization, whatever we want to do is stored. And this leverages Flux V2. That's important. The V2 is important. It's Flux V2.
So this
And it's
means
cool.
then that you can do this with your Bicep or with your Terraform when you're doing infrastructure as code, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, you can do it however you want. Maybe we'll do a video on that at some point, but Rich has got some nice examples of configuring AKS stuff inside the cluster using Bicep. So
That's very cool.
it's pretty cool. We could do pretty much do the same thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think, if I remember correctly, you even did add some customers already.
Yes, we got this running with some customers, which is really nice to see.
All right, so first things first, we've got a repository, AKS Flux demo, which contains a directory YAML, which has got 2 files. We've got an app.yaml, which is just an Nginx deployment. We're just going to deploy Nginx. The use case, we'll get to that, but just Nginx deployment, deploys a pod. And we've got a service which will expose the Nginx deployment or the pods so we can access it. Now, this is stored in GitHub. So instead of doing kubectl apply -f and a file name, or store this in Git and then use a pipeline, which essentially is doing the same thing, right? If we do an Azure DevOps pipeline, we're still triggering kubectl and then still pushing it to the cluster. So instead, what we want to do is say, hey, AKS and Flux, look at this repository and reconcile the configuration.
And do we have to use GitHub, or can we use other Git providers?
Git. If it's Git,
As long as it's Git. Nice.
We're even using a public repo now, which we'll see in a little bit. And we're going to scope it cluster wide, but we can do it namespace scoped. We can do it to any Git repository and even private repositories, as long as you provide the right credentials. But let's just do it. Let's just click ops. And we're going to call this days of DevOps. And namespace, we're going to do Nginx. And we're going to do it cluster wide. And the difference here is, do I provide the GitOps configuration access to the whole cluster or specific to the namespace? If you do it specific to the namespace, you need to go back into the cluster and make sure that all the service accounts have the right access. But if you want to do, and we'll get to that in a little bit, like multi-cluster management and multiple namespaces and manage your ingress and manage any other stuff you deploy for a customer, in terms of bootstrapping a cluster, you probably want to go for cluster wide, but you do want to make sure that not everything has all the permissions, that there's some granularity to be added here.
Nice.
Yeah, we're going to go for a cluster. We're going to do the namespace Nginx. And then here you go, like a Git repository, bucket, even Azure Blob.
Oh, very cool.
But we're going for Git repository, and we've got this here. So we want to do github.com. So it's native weekly, and then this one can even pick a branch. So if you're differentiating between main dev feature XYZ, well, you probably wouldn't do features, but like main
Releases,
dev
perhaps.
acceptance releases, you could do that. Depending on your branch, strategy, you can pick whatever you want. And here you go, Richard, private secret stored in cluster. We've got a secret in a cluster that allows us to pull that information. We can do that. We can put in authentication information, or we go with a public one, and then we've got sync configuration. If we look at what it says here, is this defines how often it will pull the updates from the Git repository. Now you're thinking, why I'm saying that? I'll get to that in a little bit, but we're going to set it to 1 minute. That's how we're for a demo. We go next, and then we got customization, which is how the Azure portal. What's so funny?
I had no idea what you just said when you put your mouth to
When
it.
you were swallowing your mic, I have no idea what you just said. So
I was like, oh, what is it? What did I say?
Something about
we-
this thing.
We put it on 1 minute because that works well for a demo.
Right.
So don't do that in production unless you really need to, is what I'm hearing.
I wouldn't put this to one, but why we wouldn't put this to 1 minute and the other one would, I'll get back to that in a second. This could perfectly be 10 minutes. It will just pull the repository into the cloud. It will just check, are there changes in the repository? For now, demo purposes, 1 minute. We're going to create a customization, or at least Azure will do that for us. And here we're going to say path/YAML. This is where we point to the /YAML path in our repository. So if you disregard the branching strategy, let's say everything is in main, but you've got different paths for dev, prod, acceptance, different products, different whatever. This is where you can make the difference, right? So if you do multi-cluster management, this is where you can differentiate a little bit. Then we've got a sync interval. And if you look at this, the sync interval defines how often the customization reconciles the cluster with the manifests. So we've got different intervals. We've got how often does it pull into the cluster? How often does it check for changes? How often does it reconcile? This allows you to play with drifting. How often do you want it to apply the configuration? How often do you want it to check the configuration? Normally, you could just leave it at 10 minutes, but depending on your use case, you have the option to, fine-tune this. We're going to go with 1 minute, 1 minute. Prune, interesting one. Enable prune to assure that objects are removed from the cluster if they are removed from the repository. This is kind of like for people using Terraform, TF state. If I remove stuff, if I delete stuff, it's going to be gone from the cluster. It's gone. But gone.
Bye.
Gone.
We're going to do that.
Just kicked out of the cluster. They're flying down the cloud like a raindrop. No, I'm going too far.
Well, it's like I think in ARM deployments we had the same option, the complete parameter, the mode set to complete. I mean, if it's not in the ARM template, it's going to be gone.
Scary. That's a scary option, to be honest.
And then we got force, which is also an interesting one. I'd be very careful. We're going to apply it because we can. But the interesting one here is that it will force, and you can see I'm pointing at my screen. You can't see that. It will force the instructor console to recreate the resource. So if you sometimes, and this is where it gets dangerous, right? Because sometimes things are applied by Azure or Kubernetes itself. If you deploy something similar, this will force it to recreate that deployment if the field is immutable. Sometimes if you do kubectl apply, you will get a message and go, oh, I can't do this because that field is immutable. This will recreate that resource. So do be careful with that. Fields are immutable for a reason.
Yep.
Especially if they run in kube system. So
please be careful.
Sounds like there's a story here.
Yeah. Maybe for another time.
I might have messed up a demo or two doing that. So okay. So we're going next. We're going to create. And now we're just going to wait. And so what's happening now is that Azure is going to provision the Flux operators, the paths, the deployments on my Kubernetes cluster. And then we'll reconcile whatever is in my repository and deploy that. And then we can make changes to the repository. We're probably going over time if we're going to do that here, but you will see that whatever is in that repository will be deployed to the cluster.
Nice.
It's going to take a couple of minutes, but then in the meanwhile, while we wait, I want to take you to this.
Before we go off to here, what's actually happening in the cluster right now? You've clicked a button you've done your click ops, but what's actually happening?
Yeah. So if we do, we get the namespaces, we can see that there's a Flux system namespace, which is going to contain all the pods that we need for Flux v2.
Which are getting deployed by you clicking configure this.
Yes. Yeah. By enabling, because what I'm doing here is not just configuring. I had no other configurations running. So what's happening is it's not just going to configure the Flux configuration and point at the repository. It's also going to deploy all the resources that I need for Flux to operate successfully.
And it's all managed by Azure, so you don't have to go and update it too much yourself and stuff like that.
It's
Nice.
We're just doing Flux now, but I've been playing in the past couple of days with Redify and Azure Policy and container image signing. And you can see there's always an add-on for something, and there's more add-ons coming. You no longer have to do the complicated stuff. You just enable an Azure feature. I did Redify, I think it was yesterday or the day before. Did a blog post on it today. And what happens is when you apply the Azure policy, it will actually create the namespace and then deploy the Redify pods, attach it to Gatekeeper, configure Gatekeeper with Azure policy. It does all that for you, whereas in the past you would need like loads of YAML and manual configuration to do that. And I think that's what makes public cloud so powerful, and especially Azure Kubernetes Service. It's just there. They build it for you, and you just enable it.
Yeah, so
very nice.
You can deploy all of this as part of your infrastructure as code routine without having to include it in your post-deployment bootstrap script. Then,
and then I guess if you got your Git repo already set up with all your bootstrapping apps in there, so your ingress controller, your monitoring, as soon as that cluster's deployed with your infrastructure as code, it's configured into GitOps, your cluster's ready to go out of the box. That's an awesome way to sort of do DR testing and actual DR scenarios as well.
I mean, but it's Key Vault, it's storage, it's ACR. You just enable it out of the box, and that it just makes me happy. It just makes me happy. Well, before we go to the GitHub page that I wanted to show, we see that it's already done deploying. No, that's fine. That's good. You're asking what's happening in the background. So what it did is we've got a Flux system namespace, and we can do kget pods -ns flux and flux system. And we can see that we got some stuff running. We got Flux config, controller, Helm controller. We can use Helm charts, customize, notification, and the source controller. And that all makes sure that I can now reconcile stuff, which we can see here. If I check my Nginx namespace, which we provided in the customized configuration, we see that we've got pods running. This is conforming what we have in the repository, a deployment with 2 replicas, and a service running on external IP 9864.112.1.7. And if I think I already pasted it, but if we then open our browser, we're just going to go click GitOps once again. It should load our Nginx page, and there we go.
Hey, very nice.
This reconciled so it pulled in the repo, and then it deployed the YAML that we have. If we remove something, it'll be gone. The way to prove that, let's just go here and let's just delete this. See what happens. It shouldn't take too long, but now it will just delete the whole Flux configuration. It won't delete namespaces. That's what you'll see with a lot of Azure add-ons. They will never delete namespaces, or generally not, because what if you were running something else in that namespace? Just to be sure.
Makes sense.
It does make sense, but all the pods and stuff, they will be gone. We can take a little look. Pods are already gone.
Very nice.
They'll clean up a lot of other stuff, but yeah.
And that's because of the
prune option. That's exactly what that does. Yeah.
Very nice.
So now we just wait for it to be deleted. We should be fine.
Nice. So I'm excited to see this Git repository that you wanted to show us.
Yes. So if you go, so there's a story behind this, right? Now we're just doing it for one cluster. But what if we were to do multiple clusters? What if we've got 20 clusters that we want to manage? This is very powerful, right? Because instead of, and this is where GitOps gets interesting, instead of pushing every single configuration to every because we're using best practices and standards, right? We want to have standardized deployment, obviously.
Yep.
So in every cluster, let's say we want to use a specific Nginx ingress configuration. We put that in our repository. We can have multiple repositories. We can have one of them, but we can have multiple clusters look at it. We can have multiple configurations for different clusters or identical configurations for different clusters. And there's a very nice repository, which if you go to the Microsoft Learn page on GitOps and multi-cluster management, you will find this repository called Calypso.
Nice name.
And there's nice name. It reminds me of what is it, Pirates of the Caribbean?
Oh yes. There was a character called Calypso.
I think it was the third one. Calypso. It was the third one. Yeah. Okay, so I'm getting carried
it's not
away.
What it reminds me of, but it's okay.
Does it remind you of Ice Swallows, Carl? Because it also reminds
No,
me
it.
That's
I have
Oh,
children,
yes.
so it reminds me of the TV show Bluey, and their nursery leader is called Calypso. So
Calypso is there was a person in Pirates of the Caribbean, and Calippo is ice cream.
Yes, the ice law is. That's what it still reminds me of. That
the ice law is dead. The ones that you can't get out.
Yeah, you push up. Yeah. Amazing.
You would get like a little piece of paper to warm your hands. And... Okay, so Calypso, GitOps. Sorry, Michael. GitOps.
He's easily distracted tonight, Michael. Sorry.
Yes, it's like, oh, there's a bird. Okay. So we've got this repository, Calypso. And it's got very nice examples of multi-cluster management using GitOps. And I'm not going to read all of this, but just going to scroll through it because it's got 2 very nice pictures, or 3 actually. So this is basically what we're doing. We've got an application repo. We've got a cluster. We're doing GitOps, and we want to push information to that. We're using Flux for that. But Flux is not the only operator, right? There's more to it. Now, here's a nice example, and these are the examples they provide you within this repository for you to build upon. I can have different GitOps providers. I mean, Flux is a very big one. Argo is a very big one. We're not going to do a Flux versus Argo showdown here because that will get very offensive and we will get a lot of messages. Everyone's got their own opinion. I mean, I did play with Argo a little bit, and it's not. It
has a nice UI.
It has a nice UI. I don't necessarily want a UI, but it does work, and it does help a lot of people getting started with GitOps flows. That's true. Multiple ways to reconcile configuration into a cluster using GitOps. Lots of examples here. Very, very well explained. I can definitely recommend people to take a look at this. To go to the more advanced production scenarios. 1 cluster, 2 clusters. Maybe you've got a prod and a dev and acceptance cluster. Maybe you're doing prod and dev namespaces, prod dev acceptance namespaces. There's so many different configurations that you can do.
I'm just thinking you could even have a namespace per developer as well, and then manage the underlying infrastructure part of Kubernetes. So the ingress controller through your GitOps, and then each of them could have their own branch, which could then add on top of it, put the manifest. Yeah, you can do some crazy cool things with this. So very exciting.
That's the thing. The more variables you have, the more options you have. But this repository does really make it come together and help you with those different use cases and helps you get started. I mean, just deploying a single YAML or 2 YAML files like we did, I mean, that's pretty straightforward. That's what we want to show you, how easy it is to get started. But you want multiple things to be in place, right? You want to have your strategy mapped out, like documented here. You want to have a good branching policy, a good branching strategy. Internally, you want people to adhere to your standards. So you always do pull requests. You can do get reverts, all of that. If you've got all of that in place, and I'm just thinking you could blog about this for the next year if you want, but so many things to do, but AKS does make it easy to get started.
Mhm.
Yeah, which is really nice.
It's awesome,
Yeah.
right?
And I'm just going to put the link up again in case someone wants to see that repo.
Yeah.
Yeah, so from scanning over that repo, it looks like you'll learn plenty just by reading this repository, never mind actually trying to do any of it. So, yeah, get stuck in.
Yeah, there's lots of code, lots of examples just to get started.
Yeah. Well, that was a awesome 30-minute session we just did there.
30 minutes, acceptable
yeah.
time.
Yeah, not bad at all. A lot better than sometimes when we totally overrun. Looking at you, Carlo. What was it? 10-minute tech we did once, and it was what, nearly
30 minutes,
45
minutes.
Something like that.
That's an
I watched the
exaggeration,
replay.
Jess.
That was a lot of time spent on 10 minutes in tech.
Mhm.
It was good.
I just enjoy getting stuck into a demo. 10 minutes
Yeah.
is
good.
Yeah.
It's tricky to keep something in 10 minutes.
It's tricky.
But yeah. But what I would like to say is, anyone who is watching and you like this format and what we're talking about, we have season 1 on our YouTube channel, which you can find at the top. There somewhere. And have a look at all of our previous videos. Please give it a thumbs up, like, comment, subscribe, and all of that. And obviously, massive thanks to Michael for organizing this awesome event, 90 Days of DevOps. Yep. And again, thanks for having us. It's just been awesome. Yeah, keep up the good work, mate.
Yeah.
Great initiative.
Here. Thank you. And with that, I think we're out.
Yeah.
Have a good evening.
See you, everyone.
Have a good morning. Have a good day whenever you're watching. And thank you. Bye-bye.
See you.